Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking, Dembi Buyaki. Welcome aboard. Today we'll be taking our final flight. It's a bit bittersweet, I must confess, and we're kicking off as usual from Nairobi, flying through wrap-ups and landing ultimately at goodbyes. I hope, as you have been enjoying the previous flights, hopefully for sure, you will also have a good one on this one. Seatbelts on and wheels up. I have honored myself and maybe you by writing you a whole speech. So, dear passengers, how great of a journey and experience it has been to fly these different routes with you, to explore planet Earth, to listen to our tears when it comes to the grievances that are associated with climate change and its adversities, to be bold enough to have dared to look into the mirror and realized who actually is the biggest perpetrator when it comes to climate change, and to have taken a step even further and be willing to take action in our different spheres to change the course of our futures. I implore you not to cease to hear planet Earth's cry and cry for help, to recognize that we could be the ones potentially causing her tears and step up to be the ones to console and heal her ultimately. As I have taught you, age does not really matter when it comes to FONV, Flight Over Nature's view. Anyone can take action. Being part of it is what actually is important. Anyone and everyone can take action. And I hope I have given simplified actions for everyone, be it organizations, governments, and breaking down even to individuals. Don't forget what I've taught you. And if so, you happen to forget, please just listen again. Don't worry, we'll make it. And there's time. And if there's time, there's hope. And lucky for us, we have both of those. Anyways, that's enough with the emotional stuff. Let's get to what we were talking about in concluding this season and this podcast. Ultimately, we've talked about water in depth in this season. And if you don't understand this, if you get started off from season 1, this is what we've been dealing in more of an abstract point or theoretic point with freshwater and climate change and salty water and climate change. And then my research on freshwater conservation and community issues. I did not take the more conventional route on studying freshwater and surface water, by the way, as most of my colleagues did. This was something I found interesting to explore, because if it were freshwater, I would just have landed on, maybe a river within my locality or within my country that's being polluted, or something that's just on the ordinary side. I think groundwater really was quite novel, not only for me, but also for this research, seeing that it took me out of the ordinary lines and out of my comfort zones to explore this. And I met some really great individuals. I still am on this research. So it's something I'm proud I did decide to take a route on. This not only being a spontaneous venture, but we saw how it seemingly had become something. As my short story in episode 7, if you haven't listened to it, no cutting the line, please. Go back and listen to how this is all going to make sense, starting from how this all started a few years ago. So it is something that's, as much as it was abstract, as much as it was coming, it's something that I am proud that I pursued and pursued fully to the end. I talked about my project, and this is just maybe like a summary of what this season has been, as I have been doing in the previous seasons. Just to wrap up, we talked about my project and introduced my co-lead to you guys, a brilliant lady for sure. I hope you think she's amazing as much as I think she is, because she is. I'd like also to give a few pointers when it comes to water and its usage. So remember the scarcity of water when it comes to its availability only for the use of drinking water and home use and industrial use. What was the percentage? It was 1%. And that's the only, more or less, what's available. And actually, it will be less going forward in regard to increase in population. Only 1% is available to support life. And by this, we need to learn how to use it in a way that's sustainable and will maintain and support our lives as much as we try to look for alternative sources as groundwater going forward. And these are some suggestions that I also came across during the World Economic Forum in 2022. Most of them being cited from there, with the biggies talking about it. And if water is getting up to that level, shouldn't we really have a conversation that seriously talks about water and climate change and water and how it supports life. Anyways, here are some few suggestions on how we could potentially use water sparingly and in a smart way going forward. Of course, with suggestions going from governments, NGOs, businesses, and to everyone and anyone, an individual. So I'm in the climate field. At least I'd like to believe I am in the climate field. And we have a common language when it comes to climate and climate-related matters. For example, if you mention to, I don't think everyone, but someone who's also interested in the climate field or just has a little bit of know-how, if you mention to them below 1.5 degrees or the Paris Agreement, they would immediately or know to some extent what you're talking about. By the way, below 1.5 degrees is the aim and ideal temperature that the planet is supposed to be at to support all life and have the effects of climate change not really felt to great atrocities or to great extent. So 1.5 is our ideal temperature that's required. And it's super sad to know that in the next 5 years, we'll probably have surpassed that. So we have hope, yes, but we have hope only if we take action to support that hope. Anyway, so in the climate field, we do have common languages, and by it, we have support that comes with the agenda being so clear and being so defined. In water, it's not so much explained or cut through that way. We know, turn off the tap or reduce, but it's not so much cut clear. And maybe the UN Water Conference this year have been trying to come up with something that's concrete like that. I hope they do, because having commonalities makes the agenda clear. And if the agenda is clear, everyone can know what to do. And not only that, it brings a lot of momentum around that topic. And it's something that can be done for by anyone and everyone if they know what's the aim and what's the agenda and how to do it. So commonalities and a common language would be something that we need to talk about when it comes to water. It will build momentum around the conservation. That's one suggestion I have. The second one is pricing of water. And this is something maybe I will come under fire for, but if water does not have a price or good enough of a price, there is no means whatsoever to value it. I mean, those companies exploiting water in the jungles of Congo, not knowing that the commodity is too precious for the people and the ecosystems that it supports. What happens if they continue using that water continuously for decades to come and it runs out, and because of climate change, the ripple effect, if they do this without knowing how precious that commodity is, it's going to destroy the ecosystems around it. And having a price on water good enough for its price is something that we need to talk about, because if food is expensive, we know how to value food. And if water is life, how can we just not also protect it in that sense by having at least pricing it just in a way that will make us understand how to value it? And this is probably to the policymakers and something they need to look into. For example, what do you mean it takes billions of liters of water for a clothing company to make certain commodities and clothes? And we talked about this. And water is also a raw material, but what's being priced for the clothes, it's not even inclusive of what billions of liters that have been used each year to make those pairs of jeans or those t-shirts or denims. So we need to have water also included as a raw material and priced in that sense. If thousands of liters of water are used to make less proportionate goods and not at all charged at its rightful worth, to whom is this loss going to be borne? Who's going to, at the end of the day, pay for all this loss in that sense? It's everyone and anyone who's not even in the clothing industry or who's not partaking of the products of that industry. Everyone will have to pay. So having water priced for everyone in a way that's sustainable and will ensure its value and worth is maintained, retained, and held in a way that's sustainable is something that we need to look into. Have water priced at its worth. That's something that we need to discuss. When it comes to cross-sector or other industries and businesses, it is supposed to be complementary to each other's efforts, and making sure that each sector is doing and playing their rightful part in a right way. And our common goal is of water conservation. This is also learning towards accountability. If businesses I know will be such a great conversation when it comes to going green. And also it needs to be something of the same as we talk about water. We need to have accountability across business sectors that use water as a raw material for their goods and those that don't, but also in some way benefit from their products. So who's going to bear the cost of this? Or is it going to be shared across the line? Or how do we manage or restore the amount of water we've used? Do we need to look into filtration systems? Do we need to look into ways we can use less water within the companies? Or just value the water in a way that's going to be sustainable for futures? So accountability in regards to cross-sector industrial and business relations is something that I would for sure front when it comes to green businesses and better business practices. And lastly, as usual, my take on individuals, because that's where all the action and all the strength is at a single person. We also need to join in the conversation and conservation of water. Everyone is using water, yes? And if everyone is using water, then everyone should be involved in the uttermost conservation of the water they're using or the water they will use in future. This is starting by valuing water. Water conservation is not and should not be such an abstract or far off topic. It should be conversations at home. It's fixing leaking pipes. It's reusing water. I mean, kitchen water, for example, can be used to start a kitchen garden. And this is something I also talked about maybe in season 1, the episode on food production. You should grow your own vegetables if you can. And this is another front where you can not only take care of your health and, also cut some finances. This is another front you can use to conserve water. So having a kitchen garden and having the compost or the refuse that's from the kitchen as manure into your garden is something that you can look into and conserve water while you're at it. So purification systems that allow water. I think this is something I was reading about from Japan, that they have, I think the problems we were having today in Kenya were solved in Japan 100 years ago, which is quite funny. But yeah, purification systems that allow water to be more or less reused to water the lawns or the flowers outside, or reduce your shower time. Close it up while you're brushing your teeth and open it only when you're rinsing. Find out things that are as per your house's needs that you will need to cut down or you could possibly cut down to save water, because it's something that will get to us for sure if we do not start conserving water. And we have seen this in different countries, not only in mine, in South Africa, but also in the Middle East. Sometimes the water is too much or it's just too little. And that's the conundrum when it comes to water security. It can be too much, and that's an insecurity. And when it's little, it's still an insecurity. Also, I found out something interesting when I was preparing for this or just going through my notes. Something that was mentioned is water actually has an age. For example, let me blow your mind. The groundwater in Saudi Arabia is actually around 20,000 years old. I for sure do not think water has an age, or I thought water is just water. It turns out they have ages as well, but it is usable. That's the water in Saudi. It's still usable, and it's groundwater, and that's the beauty or the safety that comes with groundwater. It's preserved and maintained that way for years and years to come, especially if it's replenishable. Can be 1,000 years or more years older, but it's still good enough for use. Anyway, that's just like a detour or a brief touch. I had talked about desalinization, now that we're talking about Saudi. And remembering in the water cycle is something, maybe I could clarify why I didn't quite dive into desalinization, because, it's actually 71% of the earth is made of water. And that 71 is just salty water. So why not invest in getting all this water to be usable water within the ecosystems and the economies of man? Why can't we get all this water usable? And that's desalinization, because the water has plentiful of salt and other minerals that need to be taken out so that it can be quote unquote safe to use for humans and animals and livestock at home. And removing the salt and the chemicals from the water through man-made machine-induced processes is something that will need to be done. Remember, the water cycle is something that happens naturally. The sun hits the water and the water turns into vapor. It leaves the salt behind, gets into the clouds and come back as fresh water through snow or rain. So having not these processes everywhere, we'll need to induce them by building machines that can do that for us. And the Middle Eastern countries are really big on this because most of their water is salty and that's what's available. By the way, they should and they could, I don't know if they are as well, big on groundwater because, as I mentioned, there's water in Saudi. So the water in Saudi is the groundwater and it's available. So I think that's something, honestly, as a population across the world, we need to discuss, coming to learn how we can be resourceful against something that's really depleting fast and we are not noticing because it's always around and it has always been around. I mean, it's always raining. It has always rained. And maybe this is something I missed as well during the suggestions on how we can conserve water. One thing my country or even my area they're not good at is harvesting then storing of rainwater. That's another option that we need to take because when you talk about floods, and this is an example of Tana River, if in the first 2 months of the year, it's completely desertic and drought is everywhere. And then the next 3 months, it's raining and flooded. And then after that, we have drought again. What happened to the water? Why can't we harvest that water and have it be used slowly during the drought months coming forward until we can have the next rainy season? Because now, apparently in Kenya, the rainy season is not so guaranteed. So we need to have water harvesting plants and solutions, not only in large-scale government projects, but also in your house. Do you have gutters on your roof where you can tap some rainwater into a tank and use it for, if it's not clean, you can have it treated and use it for household purposes. If it's something you prefer not to use in certain issues, you can have it be the water to flush your washrooms or to clean the house or to clean the cars. So harvesting water is something I should have mentioned. I think it's just come up spontaneously on conservation and how to price and look at water more differently in valuing it. Anyway, back to where I was at in desalinization being a best fit option on how we could, as a planet, tap into water. Here's the thing when it comes to desalinization. It would be great if we could all just have machines that could work for us and create rain and have plenty of water, which will decipher lots of climate adversities. But here's the thing, desalinization is quite a costly affair. And looking forward and moving forward, it wouldn't be quite sustainable considering how much water we all use as an individual. So that's a conundrum with desalinization. It's a good option and good idea, but it's expensive. So if your government can afford it, that would be great because give or take, that's something we all want, free water and available water all year through, but it's pricey and it's not too sustainable because we'll need to be doing the processes a lot during the year, and we use a lot of water. Like how many liters of water do you use to shower? How many times do you shower a day? And that's just one person, so you can imagine doing this for a whole country. It's quite pricey and something that would be really great for sure if we could capitalize on. But we have surface water because it's already fresh, and we have groundwater and that's also fresh. So that's the best option. Now, coming to matters concluding of this season and podcast as well, that's it with the matters of water and research with Redignify in general. Maybe if you want to speak more about it, we could attach some documents if you want to interact more with this and find out more for yourself in your country and in regards to fresh water, surface water, groundwater, desalinization. It'd be great to hear your views and what you find out from all of this. And starting from season 1, looking back now, all the climate related issues that we looked into, some I feel like I still need to do more analysis. And sometimes the parameters then will not necessarily be the parameters going forward. In regard to climate change, with every year, I think the parameters in climate change will change. And maybe we can look into doing another catch up on this podcast a few years on trying to check into these parameters and if they're still affecting us in the same way. Maybe we should do one from 2030. I don't know. We'll see. And as usual, it'd be great to have different views and perspectives from your countries and contexts from your countries when it comes to climate change going forward. And the biggest factor here being time. Time will tell a lot of things. And time is not so much on our sides. We have 7 years left to our time bomb, 2030. So for sure, it'd be great to have a different view on climate change and climate-related matters then, if they will have changed and what we would have done in terms of the actions we have suggested and we are aware we need to put into climate change to change all of this. So, of course, prayers for this world moving forward when it comes to climate change and the talks that surround it. It's always a somber thing when you talk about climate change, and all these conferences for sure always have such a somber mood when it comes to the damage we're causing ourselves, the effects of climate change and its ripple effects on other sectors. But as I said, there's hope, but only hope if if there's action. And this hope, of course, is also spanning from action. It is the feeder of action and also what spans from action itself. So to the guests and all the phenomenal people that have been on board, all the fields and cross-sectional areas that we've interacted with, it's been really cool to understand different areas that I too had not much knowledge until I actually started researching on them. For example, food production. I still need to do some digging on that, if you got it. But we'll see how it goes when it comes to all these matters. Climate change. I think all of this knowledge being out there to everyone and accessible to everyone and anyone. The whole courses, I think I said I will attach if I haven't already, that can be used to teach you more on this and for the betterment of Mother Earth. All this being knowledge that's freely accessible and achievable when it comes to action. Now, as we completely wind down for sure, it has been an honor to be your captain, plying all these different routes and explaining all these intricate details to you. I hope to hear your thoughts and takeaways to all these matters and more matters in relation to this field going forward. I know there's we should have done, by the way, like a whole episode on plastics and climate change. And I know there's a whole ecosystem. Actually, with Ecoside, we have been checking it's like environmental crimes against ecosystems. And I have been learning a lot of what these crimes look like. For example, I knew people hunt whales for certain benefits, but I didn't know that's actually ecocide in regards to the context of how they're being hunted and why they're being hunted and how many are left and how the ecosystem is being destroyed and other animals that depend on that. Like, there's a whole lot of detail and capacity that can be expanded when it comes to the climate change field. So it'd be great for sure if you have different knowledges and different perspectives when it comes to that. I hope you listen to the songs I suggested in season 1 and the movies. I'd also like to listen and watch a few of your suggestions going forward. I could go on and on with this, with the I hopes and I could. But as I said, it's all due to the honor that I have had of being the one impacting this knowledge and sitting behind this mic, giving all I know and sharing all I know, what have as well accumulated and gathered throughout the few years I have been in this climate field. So I hope it stays relevant for a few more years and possibly have more tweakers and turning points when it comes forward to the effects of climate change and what we're talking about, action to climate change. It will be fine for sure. I think it's going to be something that we can achieve in terms of action as long as we're willing to do it and the time is right. So we just have no excuse. Anyways, thank you for taking these flights with me. And as usual, all this for what? For Earth, So be safe and take care.